many Americans out here? We're living in the darkest moment that I've experienced on this planet. This is something for us to really communicate. Dismantle all the good things.
At 76 years old, Richard Gere has lived a life that most actors can only dream of. As the magnetic force behind some of Hollywood's most beloved films, he helped craft performances that defined a generation. But behind the iconic leading man image lies a story of reinvention, spiritual transformation, and a quiet courage that cost him more than fans ever realized. But time has a way of providing perspective, and at 76, Richard Gere is reflecting on his life, his loves, and his legacy with a depth and honesty that has long been absent from public discussion. In this video, we'll find out the truth. From North Syracuse to Hollywood, the making of an icon. When people talk about Richard Gere today, something important tends to get skipped over. The beginning. The part before the fame, before the magazine covers, before the red carpets. Because none of that story makes sense without understanding where the man actually started. And it did not start anywhere close to Hollywood. Richard Tiffany Gere was born on August 31st, 1949, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the second of 5 children born to Doris Ann and Homer George Gere. His father worked as an insurance agent. His mother was a homemaker. The family were Mayflower descendants, which sounds impressive until you realize it translated to a modest upbringing in North Syracuse, New York, where life moved slowly and expectations were straightforward. Finish school, get a steady job, build something practical. That was the understood path. Richard did not follow it. From a young age, something in him resisted the predetermined route. He excelled at gymnastics and music in high school, playing the trumpet with genuine skill. He graduated from North Syracuse Central High School in 1967 and enrolled at the University of Massachusetts Amherst on a gymnastics scholarship, where he studied philosophy. Studying philosophy says something about a person. It means they want to understand the world, not just navigate it. After 2 years, he walked away from the scholarship and the degree, choosing acting, a decision that must have seemed reckless to everyone watching. Those early years were genuinely unglamorous. He worked at the Seattle Repertory Theater and the Provincetown Playhouse on Cape Cod starting in 1969, learning his craft in drafty rooms for small audiences. He went to London and took the leading role in the stage production of Grease, which gave him his first taste of what commanding a performance could feel like. He was building something real, even if no one could see it yet. His early film appearances did little to announce a superstar. A small role in Report to the Commissioner in 1975 barely registered. Then, in 1977, a supporting role in the dark and unsettling Looking for Mr. Goodbar alongside Diane Keaton gave critics and audiences a reason to take notice. Terrence Malick's Days of Heaven followed in 1978, a visually stunning film that cemented critical respect, but did not yet translate into box office stardom. These were years of patient accumulation, of building a reputation brick by brick when most young actors were looking for shortcuts. The moment that changed everything came in 1980. American Gigolo cast Gere as Julian Kay, a high-end male escort moving through the sleek, hollow world of Los Angeles luxury. He brought a vulnerability underneath the surface, cool, that transformed what could have been a shallow role into something compelling. Audiences responded to something real beneath the polish. 2 years later, an officer and a gentleman made his status permanent. The film earned almost $130 million at the box office, won 2 Academy Awards, and placed Richard Gere in the upper tier of Hollywood leading men. That iconic final scene became one of the most replicated images of the 1980s. What is worth noting is how long and unglamorous the path to that moment actually was. More than a decade of genuine work before the world started paying the kind of attention it eventually would. That early pattern of patience, of choosing the harder and slower road, would define almost everything that followed. Even when fame arrived, Gere consistently made choices that prioritized depth over visibility. That instinct would soon lead him somewhere nobody expected. But the real transformation happening beneath the surface of his rising fame was not about Hollywood at all. While the cameras were pointed one direction, his soul was moving in a completely different one. What he discovered during those years would eventually cost him more than he ever publicly admitted, and it started with a journey to Asia that changed everything. Stay glued till the very end. The Price of a Conscience: How Tibet Changed Richard Gere Forever. There is a version of Richard Gere's story that could have unfolded very differently. A man reaches the top of Hollywood, consolidates his position, takes the biggest films, courts the biggest studios, and spends decades harvesting the rewards of his own talent. That version never happened. Understanding why requires going back to a moment most biopics would include only briefly, if at all. In 1978, while his career was still finding its footing, Gere traveled to Nepal and India. He encountered Tibetan monks in a refugee camp near Pokhara in Nepal, and the experience, by his own description, floored him. He had already been exploring philosophy since his university days and had spent time studying Zen practice. But meeting Tibetan Buddhists was different. Something in the warmth, patience, and deep compassion of those people who had lost almost everything, reached inside him and would not let go. He eventually made his way to Dharamsala, where he sought an audience with the Dalai Lama. That first meeting, lasting somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes, was described by Gere as feeling simultaneously like 1 minute and 10 hours. He became a student of the Gelugpa school of Tibetan Buddhism, a commitment he has maintained without interruption for more than 4 decades. The commitment deepened into sustained action. In 1987, he co-founded Tibet House US. He joined the board of the International Campaign for Tibet in 1992 and has served as its chairman since 1995. Through his Gere Foundation, he has taken his humanitarian efforts to Honduras, India, Kosovo, Mongolia, Nepal, Nicaragua, Switzerland, and Geneva, addressing human rights at the United Nations Human Rights Commission. He also collaborated with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation through the Heroes Project to fight HIV and AIDS in India. These were not celebrity appearances at charity galas. This was sustained, structural, years-long work. The Academy Awards of 1993 became the moment that defined the public cost of that conviction. Gere was presenting an award at the ceremony, watched by hundreds of millions of people globally. He went off script. He addressed the Chinese government directly, calling for the removal of Chinese troops from Tibet. The result was swift and lasting. He was banned from the Oscars for 20 years. China placed a lifetime ban on Gere entering the country, and major Hollywood studios, deeply protective of access to the enormous Chinese market, quietly began to distance themselves from him. The practical damage was real. He has openly stated that his politics regarding China made him unwelcome within major studios for years. Most people in his position would have walked it back, issued a careful statement, found a way to preserve the career without fully surrendering the belief. Richard Gere did not do that. He continued appearing before congressional committees, the European Parliament, and the United Nations. He continued funding Tibetan projects, sponsoring Dalai Lama teachings, and advocating publicly. The cost in lost roles, diminished studio access, and reduced commercial opportunity was simply accepted as the price of acting from conscience rather than convenience. His film choices after that period reflect the consequences clearly. Without major studio backing, he moved into independent productions. And something interesting happened. Some of the most critically respected performances of his career arrived in those smaller films. Primal Fear in 1996 earned universal praise. Chicago in 2002 gave him a Golden Globe Award for Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy. Arbitrage in 2012 earned him a 4th Golden Globe nomination, with reviewers calling the performance impossible to ignore. In 2024, he starred in Oh Canada, directed by Paul Schrader, playing a filmmaker confronting the weight of his past at the end of his life. The film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. That same year, he joined the cast of the Paramount Plus political thriller series The Agency, playing Bosco, the London station chief. This was a man still working, still choosing roles for reasons that had nothing to do with the size of the paycheck or the studio logo on the poster. The Goya Internacional 2025 award from Spain's Film Academy honored Gere for his extraordinary contribution to the art of filmmaking and his deep social commitment to refugees, the homeless, and human rights, with Antonio Banderas presenting the award at the ceremony in Granada on February 8, 2025. Previous recipients of the award include Kate Blanchett, Juliette Binoche, and Sigourney Weaver. In accepting the honor, Gere said that stories bring people together and remind them of what connects them regardless of where they are from. A career reshaped by conscience, not by accident. A man who made choices that the commercial machinery of Hollywood would never have made for him, and who lived with those choices with more consistency than almost anyone of his generation. But something even more unexpected was still ahead. Something that altered the man himself in ways no amount of activism or filmmaking ever could. And it came in the form of a woman 2 decades his junior, who quietly became the center of everything. Stay glued till the very end. Love, family, and the life nobody expected Richard Gere to choose. There is something that tends to surprise people when they look closely at Richard Gere's personal life. Here is a man who spent most of his adult years associated with the image of a sophisticated leading man, someone too cool and too self-contained for the messiness of real emotional vulnerability. And then, in his late 60s, something entirely different happened. His earlier relationships were high-profile in the way Hollywood relationships tend to be. His marriage to supermodel Cindy Crawford ran from 1991 to 1995, a union that generated enormous media attention and ended without the public drama that often follows such separations. He subsequently entered a relationship with actress Carrie Lowell, whom he married in 2002. That marriage lasted until 2013, and their son, Homer James Jigme Gere, was born on February 6, 2000. Gere became a father for the first time at the age of 50, which is its own kind of statement about timing. Then came Alejandra Silva. She is a Spanish publicist and activist, born in Galicia in 1983, making her 33 years younger than Gere. They married in April 2018 in a private ceremony. Their son Alexander was born in February 2019, and a second son, James, followed in 2020. Richard Gere became a father of young children again in his 70s, a reality that has clearly reshaped his sense of what daily life is actually for. He sold his Connecticut estate in October 2024 for $10.75 million and relocated the entire family to Madrid. The decision was rooted in a straightforward kind of love. Alejandra was generous in giving him years in America, and Gere told Jimmy Fallon on The Tonight Show that it was only fair to give her years in Spain, close to her family, her friends, and her culture. He described his children as bilingual and said they would flourish there. That framing, built around what his wife needed rather than what served his career, says more about who this man has become than most interviews ever could. Their time in Madrid proved genuinely happy. In January 2025, Gere told Ella España that the family was in their momentum, happier than ever. He received the International Goya Award in Granada in February 2025, with Alejandra beside him on the red carpet, both appearing at ease in a way that photographs of public life rarely capture authentically. The family attended the Madrid premiere of their short documentary, What Nobody Wants to See, in November 2025, a creative project born directly from their shared life in Europe. In early 2023, while vacationing in Nuevo Vallarta, Mexico, to celebrate Alejandra's 40th birthday, the entire family fell ill. Gere developed a cough that worsened and was hospitalized overnight with pneumonia. He was discharged the following morning, and Alejandra kept followers updated through her social media, confirming that the worst had passed and that he was recovering well. The moment was a reminder of physical vulnerability in a way that even the most grounded person cannot fully prepare for. Then, after approximately a year in Spain, the family returned to the United States. The decision was not a retreat from the Spanish chapter, but an acknowledgement of balance. Gere confirmed to Hello magazine that they were back in the US, calling the Spanish year wonderful, and saying the most important thing was that his wife had been truly happy with her family, her friends, her culture, and her city. His eldest son, Homer, had been openly expressing how much he missed his father and stepfamily while they were abroad. There is something worth sitting with in all of this. A man whose image for decades was built around a certain kind of untouchable elegance chose, in the second half of his life, to be completely available. To a wife, he relocated continents for. To young children he is raising in his mid-70s. To causes that have cost him professionally for more than 30 years. The version of Richard Gere that showed up for all of those commitments is not the one sold in movie posters. It is something considerably more real and considerably harder to walk away from admiring. But there is one final dimension of who this man is at 76 that ties everything else together. The inner life that has quietly sustained everything from his activism to his marriages to his willingness to accept professional setbacks without bitterness. Understanding that inner life reveals why the story of Richard Gere does not actually fit the category most people keep trying to put him in. Stay glued till the very end. At 76, the man who found the thing that actually mattered. At 76, Richard Gere has lived long enough to see his own story from a distance that younger versions of him could not have managed. He can look at the choices, the costs, the windfalls, and the losses, and assess them with the clarity that only decades provide. What emerges from that assessment does not reduce easily to a Hollywood success story or a cautionary tale about sacrifice. His Buddhist practice has been the thread running through everything, not as a brand or a lifestyle signifier, but as a genuine daily commitment that predates his biggest films and has outlasted all his marriages, business dealings, and professional setbacks. He has described his inner life as always having felt rooted in meditation, even before he formally understood what that meant. As a student of the Dalai Lama and a devout practitioner of Tibetan Buddhism, he has co-sponsored 5 historic visits to America by the Dalai Lama and organized major teachings in Mongolia, India, and the United States. That is not the behavior of someone who adopted a spiritual identity for publicity. That is someone living what they believe. The documentary Wisdom of Happiness, which Gere executive produced, and which features an intimate 90-minute conversation with the Dalai Lama, screened in theaters across the United States on October 17, 2025. Gere personally introduced the film at the AMC Lincoln Square 13 in Manhattan, followed by a live panel discussion broadcast to theaters nationwide. The film focuses on compassion and inner peace as practical tools for navigating a turbulent world rather than abstract ideals. On October 1, 2025, Richard Gere received the inaugural Visionary Award from Human Rights First, honoring his lifetime of commitment to promoting human rights and raising awareness on global issues. For a man who absorbed serious professional consequences in 1993 for speaking about Tibet on a globally broadcast stage, receiving formal recognition from a human rights organization more than 3 decades later carries a particular weight. It is the kind of validation that arrives long after a person has stopped needing it. On the question of his own career and how he regards it now, Gere has arrived at a place that sounds less like satisfaction and more like acceptance of complexity. He turned down Gordon Gekko in Wall Street in 1987, a decision he has described as the professional regret he carries most clearly. He also went through long stretches when studios were reluctant to work with him. None of that, in retrospect, appears to have broken anything essential in him. His son Homer has begun a career of his own in film and television. Gere's younger sons, Alexander and James, are growing up multilingual between continents, with a father whose version of later life looks nothing like the conventional model. At an age when most of his peers have stepped well back from active professional life, Gere was still executive producing documentaries, still playing complex characters in prestige television, and still giving speeches that people actually listened to. The net worth most often cited for Richard Gere sits at approximately $120 million in 2025 and 2026, built across more than 5 decades of film work, real estate transactions, and production credits. His real estate portfolio included significant transactions such as the sale of his Pound Ridge, New York compound for over $24 million in 2022. That financial figure does not capture what is actually interesting about the man. What is interesting is how little of his decision-making appears to have been driven by wealth accumulation. He chose activism over access. He chose love over image management. He chose smaller films that said something over larger ones that said nothing. He chose to raise young children in his 70s. He chose a year in Madrid because his wife deserved it. He chose to stand on a stage in front of 1 billion people and speak about Tibet instead of reading the teleprompter. Those choices did not produce the career that maximum commercial calculation would have produced. They produced something considerably more unusual, a life that looks, from the outside, like it was genuinely lived from the inside. At 76, Richard Gere is not someone standing at the edge of a legacy trying to protect it. He appears to be someone who genuinely worked out a long time ago what he was actually for, and who has spent the decades since living that answer out with more consistency than most people manage in half the time. The films remain. The causes remain. The family he built later than anyone expected remains. And that, for anyone paying close attention, is the thing that makes this story worth sitting with for a while. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed Richard Gere's remarkable story, please like this video, share it with someone who would appreciate it, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on his incredible life and choices. We read every comment. See you next time.